My name is Scott Sievert, and sir, with your permission, I'd like to have a short PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
I live at 3722 Fair. I have been a Davenport resident for 37 years and have lived at the 3722 Fair residence for the last 25 years. My wife Sandy and I are opposed to the rezoning of the property known as 219 East Kimberly Road from R3 to R5 MPUD. I would like to begin by saying I will not be speaking about saving the trees for ecological reasons or stormwater runoff. A property owner developer has the right to develop and build on their property within the scope of the zoning ordinance and other rules and regulations that apply to their property. That includes keeping and removing trees. That being said, I would like to expound on the 3 points that appear on the slide. There was much discussion last council meeting that in order to make a proper decision, aldermen were inclined to pass the rezoning to see the detailed plan. I want to point out that approving the rezoning with this concept plan, which has a general concept of 50 dwelling units in 6 buildings, 40 feet tall and 2.77 acres, assures that the rezoning in the concept plan becomes an ordinance, and there is no automatic return to the current R3 residential zoning if the developer's detailed plan does not satisfy planning and zone or the council. I believe this requires the council to decide early in the process whether or not this higher dwelling unit density rezoning is the direction you want to take and is good for the neighborhood and is good for the city. If the council approves the rezoning, it does not allow the council to take the higher dwelling unit density factor and its impact on the neighborhood into consideration when deciding on the detailed plan. The property does not return to a lower dwelling unit density without having to do this all over again to return it to a residential zoning. The property was zoned R3 when purchased and remains R3 until the council votes to change it. There is no expectation that a property will be rezoned when it's purchased. That is not the purchaser's guarantee, nor should it be an assumption. There has been discussion on the council that this concept plan is a better option for the neighborhood than a commercial development, and the implication has been that if the project doesn't happen, something worse can go in there. The only way a commercial project can go in there is if the council changes the zoning. Staff has identified this area as commercial corridor, and that this particular piece of property should be a buffer between the retail commercial property to the east and the neighborhood to the west. A commercial corridor designation is a label and not a zoning designation. A buffer or transition area can certainly be less dense than what is proposed. The question continues to be, will increasing the dwelling unit density by a factor of 9 compared to the neighborhood to the west be a buffer, or will it further squeeze and negatively impact the neighborhood? The 2025 comprehensive plan does not call for a land use change in this area. This slide shows the proposed land use changes from 2005 to the 2025 comprehensive plan. There are no changes highlighted in this area. This slide shows the 2005 existing land use. And this slide shows the proposed 2025 comprehensive plan use. There is no change from the 2005 map to the 2025 map. It was discussed at the last council meeting that changes are inevitable and that the neighbors should not feel that their neighborhood is sacrosanct. I had to look that up, by the way. Sacrosanct means extremely sacred or inviolable. Sacred? No, but surely very important to us. Up until this last year, my wife and I were the junior residents of the neighborhood. We purchased our home 25 years ago. Most of our neighbors have been there longer. Collectively, the neighbors have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in our neighborhood and in the city. And it's my opinion that that investment should not be taken lightly by decision makers or overshadowed by the often discussed increase in revenue from property taxes from the development. Is it inviolable? No. This area has changed much in the last 3 or 4 decades. The slide on the screen shows the 1950 aerial view of our neighborhood and the surrounding area. As can be seen, there is no commercial development here. This slide shows the neighborhood and the current development surrounding it. North Park, Lou Jack's, Kmart, Lexus, restaurants, gas stations, Toys R Us, banks, and other businesses all surround this neighborhood. This slide shows the neighborhood from the north. I believe that you would be hard-pressed to find a neighborhood in the city that has more commercial development surrounding such a small residential neighborhood. This is the view from the west. This is the view from the east. This view shows an overhead of the area from a larger perspective. I believe it illustrates again just how much commercial development surrounds the neighborhood. As far as change is concerned, certainly the neighbors don't feel as if we have not endured change over the last 3 or 4 decades. We have adapted to not going east on 37th from Fair when the football games at Brady are letting out. All the Davenport high schools use that facility. It's a great facility. A lot of people use it, but it does increase traffic flow in the area when an event is occurring. We have adapted to 37th Street being used as a shortcut to North Park by those who want to bypass Kimberly and Brady. We have learned that you have to pay close attention when pulling out on the 37th Street in case there's a Lou Jack salesman hurrying to fill up its shell. We have adapted to the noise from the bands from the football games and the band competitions. We have adapted to the live bands and the radio broadcasts from Hooters. We have adapted to the live bands at the various bars close to the area when they get a noise variance for their outdoor patios. We have adapted to the PA announcements from Lou Jack's. We have adapted to the relatively constant road noise from Welcome Way, Kimberly, and Brady Street. And we have adapted to the car and pedestrian traffic going north on Fair, thinking they somehow have an access to Welcome Way or North Park from there because apparently the dead end sign isn't big enough. And we have adapted to growth in this area, all while trying to maintain as safe and peaceful a neighborhood as we can, realizing that we are in the center of town and surrounded by commercial development. In summary, please don't approve this rezoning just to see the detailed plan. Decide if this increase in dwelling unit density is best for the neighborhood and the city, or does it continue to squeeze the small neighborhood to the west and negatively impact it. If you pass the rezoning just to see the detailed plan, the passing virtually assures a higher dwelling unit density on that property. The property when purchased was purchased at R3, and it's R3 today. When the neighbors purchased their property, their eyes were wide open. I can only assume that the property owner knew he was purchasing property zoned at R3. The comprehensive plan does not require a rezoning. The goals of the 2025 comprehensive plan can be met with this property zoned at the current lower dwelling unit density rate. The neighborhood has endured and adapted to much change over the years, and the homeowners have invested in their neighborhood and in the city. That should not be overlooked. Please don't let the revenue-generating aspect of the increase in property taxes overshadow the impact to the neighborhood. And finally, creating a higher dwelling unit density further squeezes the neighborhood and negatively impacts the neighborhood with traffic, noise, and privacy issues. The neighborhood has changed enough. Please keep the property zoned as is, and if possible, work with this property owner, this developer, or another for a less dense buffer transition area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.